Hello everyone. Let's start with the local administration on page number 77 of medieval India. Local administration. When the Turks conquered the country, they divided into a number of tracts called iktas, which were parceled out among the leading Turkish nobles. The holders of these officers were called muktis or walis. It were these tracts which later became provinces or subas. At first, the muktis were almost independent. They were expected to maintain law and order in their tracts and collect the land revenue due to the government. Out of the money they collected, they were expected to meet the salaries due to the soldiers and keep the balance. As the central government became stronger and gained experience, it began to control the muktis more closely. It began to try to ascertain the actual income and to fix the salaries of soldiers and the mukti in cash. The mukti was now required to remit to the center the balance of the income after meeting the expenditure. The auditing of accounts, which took place after a couple of years, was often accompanied by harshness, including torture and imprisonment of the mukti. These were relaxed by Firoz Tughlaq towards the end of the Sultanate. Below the provinces were sheikhs, and below them was Pargana. We do not know much about the administration of these units. We are told that a village was grouped into a units of 84 or 100, traditionally called Chaurasi. This must have been the basis of Parganas. Parganas. The Pargana was headed by the Amil. The most important people in the village were the Khud, the landowners, and the Mukaddam or the headmen. We also hear the village accountant or patwari. We do not know how exactly the village was administered. It was perhaps not interfered with as long as it paid the land revenue due from it. In the initial stage, hardly any change was made in the working and administration at the local level. Land revenue continued to be collected in the same manner, more or less, by the same set of people. This must have been a major factor in the Turks establishing their authority in the countryside quickly. The changes we have mentioned began from the time of Alauddin Khilji at the beginning of the 14th century, and they led to conflicts including peasant disturbances. Economic and social life. We have very little information about the economic condition of the people under Delhi Sultanate. The historians of the period were more interested in the events at the court than the lives of ordinary people. However, they do sometimes tell us the prices of commodities. Ibn Battuta, a resident of Tangier in North Africa, visited India in the 14th century and lived in the court of Muhammad Tughlaq for 8 years. He travelled widely all over India and has left a very interesting account of the products of the country, including fruits, flowers, herbs, etc. The condition of the roads and the life of people. We have some other accounts also. The food grains and other crops, the fruits and the flowers mentioned by these travelers are familiar to us. Ibn Battuta says that the soil was so fertile that it could produce 2 crops every year, rice being sown 3 times a year. Sesame, sugarcane, and cotton were also grown. They formed the basis of many village industries such as oil pressing, making of jaggery, weaving, etc. Peasants and rural gentry. As before, peasants formed the overwhelming majority of the population. The peasant continued to work hard and eke out bare subsistence. There were recurring famines and wars in different parts of the country, and these added to the hardships of the peasant. All the peasants did not live at the level of subsistence. The village headmen, mukaddams, and smaller landlords, khuds, enjoyed a higher standard of life. In addition to their own holdings, They had lands for which they paid revenue at concessional rates. Sometimes they misused their officers to force ordinary peasants to pay their share of land revenue also. These people were prosperous enough to ride on costly Arabi and Iraqi horses, wear fine clothes, and behave like members of the upper classes. As we have seen, Alauddin Khilji took stern action against them and curtailed many of their privileges. Even then, they continued to enjoy a higher standard of life than the ordinary peasants. It seems that after the death of Alauddin, they were able to resume their old ways. A section which enjoyed a higher standard of life were Hindu Rais or autonomous Rajas, many of whom continued to hold their previous estates. There are a number of references to the visits of Hindu Rais to the courts of Balban. There is little doubt that these Hindu Rais continued to be powerful even in the area under direct control of Sultans of Delhi. Thank you everyone. In the next part, we'll start with trade, industry, and the merchants on page number 79 of Medieval India. Thank you for tuning in. All the best for exams, and do share and subscribe the channel for more videos like this. Thank you.